Welcome students, staff, parents, and visitors to our Remembrance Day Assembly. Thank you for joining us this morning. We kindly ask that you remove any decorative hats and turn off your cell phones during this time. It would be most unfortunate to have a distraction during an assembly of such great importance. I would like to acknowledge that we are learning and working on the shared traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, including the Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. We will begin our assembly with the singing of O Canada. Please stand quietly now. Thank you. Please be seated. Today we remember our country's soldiers who fought in several wars all over the world. The freedom we have today has been given to us by the soldiers who fought in wars and conflicts around the world. Remembrance Day is November 11th. On Remembrance Day, formerly called Armistice Day, Canadians throughout Canada will stop whatever they are doing to remember the men and women who were killed in the World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Gulf War, as well as Afghanistan and United Nations peacekeeping missions. This year, ceremonies will be quiet, as gatherings are kept small, and the usual parades to memorials are conducted virtually for the most part. It is hard for some of us who have lived in Canada our whole lives to really know what war is like. Others, who have come to Canada from other countries, may have experienced conflict firsthand, and Remembrance Day will be a poignant, timely, heartfelt reminder of sacrifices that their families have experienced. There are fields in Belgium, France, where the poppies grow. Flanders is a place where much fighting took place during the War of 1914 to 1918. This war was known as the Great War, World War I. It received this name because it was the first time in history that almost every country in the world was at war. Although it was the Great War, it was not a great time in history. This war lasted 4 years, and every spring the soldiers who lived and fought in the trenches noticed the red flowers blooming all over the battlegrounds and on the graves of their friends who had been killed. In Flanders Fields, a poem of remembrance was written during World War I by a Canadian soldier named Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae. It is recited every year as a way to never forget all the soldiers who died. In Flanders Fields. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead, short days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. Why a poppy? When the war was finally over and the people who were in the Army, Navy, and Air Force came home, they thought of all their friends who were buried in the fields of Flanders. Each time they thought of their friends, they also remembered the poppies that grew around the graves. They did not want Canadians to forget those who had died serving Canada. It was decided that a ceremony would be held once a year to honor their memory. The poppy became a symbol that everyone could wear to show they remembered too. Please wear a poppy. Please wear a poppy, the lady said, and held one forth, but I shook my head. Then I stopped and watched as she offered them there, and her face was old and lined with care. But beneath the scars the years had made, there remained a smile that refused to fade. A boy came whistling down the street, bouncing along on carefree feet. His smile was full of joy and fun. "Lady," said he, "may I have one?" When she pinned it on, he turned to say, "Why do we wear a poppy today?" The lady smiled in her wistful way and answered, "This is Remembrance Day, and the poppy there is a symbol for the gallant men who died in the war. And because they did, you and I are free. That's why we wear a poppy, you see. I had a boy about your size with golden hair and big blue eyes. He loved to play and jump and shout. Free as a bird, he would race about. As the years went by, he learned and grew and became a man, as you will too. He was fine and strong with a boyish smile, but he'd seemed with us such a little while. When war broke out and he went away, I still remember his face that day. When he smiled at me and said goodbye, I'll be back soon, Mum, so please don't cry. But the war went on, and he had to stay, and all I could do was wait and pray. His letters told us of the awful fight. I can see it in my dreams at night, with the tanks and guns and cruel barbed wire, and the mines and the bullets and the bombs and the fire. That sure did sound like an awful fight. But your son, did he come back all right? A tear rolled down each faded cheek. She shook her head but didn't speak. I slunk away in a sort of shame, and if you were with me, you'd have done the same. For our thanks in giving is aft delayed, though our freedom was bought and thousands paid. And so when I see a poppy worn, let us reflect on the burden borne by those who gave very all when asked to answer their country's call, that we at home in peace might live, then wear a poppy and give. In a moment, we will be standing for 2 minutes of silence, a pittance of time, really, to honor those men and women who lost their lives in the many wars that have been fought. During this time, please stand silently, listen to the last post, and remember those who died so that we could have a better life. Please stand and remain standing until told you may sit.
Commitment to remember. They were young, as we are young. They served, giving freely of themselves. To them we pledge, amid the winds of time, to carry their torch and never forget. We will remember them.
We will remember them.
On the 11th hour of the 11th day, every November in sun or rain, we will stand up to remember the veterans whose lives were ended in the Great War, in the Great War. Of people all shut their eyes. The last post echoes from a bugle's cry. A moment when the world's together. A date frozen in time forever. On the 11th hour of the 11th day, sun or rain, we will stand up to remember the veterans whose lives were ended in the Great War, in the Great War, in the Great War, in the Great War. Come and go. Soldiers in countries that aren't their own
It is difficult for us today to really understand how hard it was for the military men and women to not only be away from their families, but to also be faced with the hardships of war every day. We should never take for granted how fortunate most of us are to have lived in our lives in a country where we can speak freely, have most of our basic needs met, and not live in fear for our lives. Compared to much of the world, we are very lucky. Many people in other parts of the world are not. We are a small little part of the world. But no matter how small we might be, we can make a huge difference every day by being tolerant, being empathetic, being respectful, by caring about yourself and others, and by being accountable for your actions. These simple acts are all part of Betty Huff's three things: taking care of myself, taking care of others, and taking care of this place. They will honor our country, our community, and the people who fought so hard to give us freedom. To imagine a world without war, we must first imagine and work for a world with justice, a world in which young people of all nations can dream about the future and picture themselves in it, a world in which we not only tolerate differences but are enriched by them, and a world where all people are valued. I want to thank you for listening to our Remembrance Day Assembly today, and be safe, be kind, and be calm.